Welcome back to A to Z here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Search Locked On Sports Atlanta. Make sure you check out all the shows on our Locked On Sports Atlanta platform. After A to Z, you got Hitting Hard with John Chuckery. You have ATL Day Ones with Jarvis Davis and Tanisha Batiste. Of course, our Braves postcast with Grant McCauley. Locked On Falcons with Aaron Freeman and Locked On Hawks with Brad Rowland. The entire cast here, man, just really, really good. I'm glad that you guys have chosen to make Locked On Sports Atlanta part of your daily sports listen, and we appreciate all the support and love you guys have given us since we've started this. The venture has been so much fun. This is a great group of people, and I hope you guys will stay along for the ride. Speaking of staying along for the ride, that's what Falcons fans have to do now as they are in this rebuilding process. And as they get rookie mini camp underway this weekend, I've kind of been looking at different players in this camp that I am excited to see, or at least interested to see how they're going to perform. Talked about Troy Anderson of Montana State and how he is going to grow and develop. And of course, Tyler Algier, we talked about him yesterday, and I think he will be the starting running back in week one for the Falcons as they take the field when we find out on Thursday what their schedule looks like. But week one, my guess is he's the bell cow back. He's the guy who's going to get 12, 15, 18 carries every single game. Given what they've done with the rest of this roster, there's no reason to believe that he's not going to be the number one back once the season starts. The player I wanted to look at today was Arnold Ebiketie, and it's interesting where and sort of how when you hit the rewind button, how they got Arnold Ebiketie when you think about it. Obviously the Falcons took Drake London at 8 overall, and we can assume that had Travon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, or Kayvon Thibodeau fall into number 8 for some reason, the Falcons would have jumped on one of those guys first, right? They didn't. They didn't reach or take Jermaine Johnson, who ended up with the Jets at 26, and he fell. And for some people, that validates not taking him. I don't necessarily buy into that because there are other teams that are in a position to draft for need and don't have to take best player available, like the Baltimore Ravens, who drafted a safety in Kyle Hamilton. They drafted for need. They need that position badly. Their secondary has been decimated with injuries and everything else, and so they are a team that has the ability to draft for need. They don't take best player available. There are other teams like Pittsburgh for best draft a need. They went out and got a quarterback. That's fine. So into that whole deal. It's one thing when a guy drops in the first round between the top 10 and falls to 26, and what happened in a Kobe Dean, who falls completely out of a round and goes somewhere else. There's a little bit, I think, a little bit more validity to a guy dropping and saying that teams passed on him for a reason, right? Like I think there's a clear difference there. So the Falcons chose to go wide receiver in the first round. We've been over that ground. We don't need to go over it again. But they went and got Ebiketie in the second round, and they had to give away picks. They had to move up. They had to trade picks to get up and do it. Now, that tells you one of two things. One, they obviously were targeting him and wanted him, but they also needed to make sure that of all the pass rushers that were left into the second round, they couldn't afford to let somebody else grab him because then they felt that they would have had nothing, right? And so it says a lot about, again, and some of that's the way the draft board falls, right? Who gets taken before you. I mean, the Falcons only had, one pick in the first round. So unless they were going to make a trade back into the end of the first round and give away a bigger quality of assets to do it, they were drafting in the second round. So things fell the way they fell, and a whole bunch of defensive players were taken. So when the second round started, they clearly knew that this was the guy that they had to have, and they couldn't wait any longer. So they gave away assets to get him. I don't know if that means necessarily that they valued him that much. I think what it really was that they saw a drop off after Ebiketie to whoever was next by a large margin, and so they made sure that they got him, and they did get him. And so here we are, and this is a player who, when you look at his measurables and his size and his speed and where he is, well, I think that this is going to be a very good fit for the Falcons. But what I really think is that when I think of Dean Pease, and again, I got to cover Dean Pease in Baltimore. And so I know what his defense is and what he likes. And what he's really good at is elevating linebackers, right? He and Ted Monachino are excellent together when it comes to making linebackers really good players and well-rounded players. And the best that I can think of, and this may be a lofty comparison here, but this just goes back to my days in Baltimore. Um, if he can use Arnold Ebiketie in a similar way that he used Terrell Suggs, and that's a huge name because Terrell Suggs is likely headed to the Hall of Fame. But they're of similar size. Ebiketie 6'2", Suggs is 6'3". Right now, Ebiketie's 255 and Suggs is 265. So they're similar size players. I think that Ebiketie's actually a little bit faster than Suggs is, or was. But, that's the kind of player I think Dean Peace envisions for Arnold Ebiketie. Again, that's bold because of Suggs' lengthy career and how accomplished he was and everything that he did. He also got to play alongside one of the best middle linebackers in the history of the game and played alongside, one of the best defensive linemen to play the game in Haloti Ngata and a whole bunch of other really good players on that team. That said, the Falcons don't have that stable. So things may be a little bit more difficult for Arnold Ebiketie as he gets going. But I could envision him being used in a very similar way. Both, as a guy who often puts his hands in the dirt and goes that way, or as a stand-up typical 3-4 outside linebacker that works his way to the quarterback. And they're going to exploit his speed. They're going to use his speed as often as they can to try and get to the quarterback. And I think if Arnold Ebiketie is playing next to, playing next to Grady Jarrett, that's probably the best position. If Grady Jarrett's going to play on the D line, Jarrett's not going to play nose tackle, at least not typically. So if he's the defensive end there, and Ebiketie is next to him, that's going to open up a world of possibilities for both of them. Because you're either going to have to deal with Grady Jarrett or you're going to have to try and keep up with Ebiketie's speed. And I think that may be the best kind of 1-2 punch that they can put together on the defensive line. To me, that seems to make the most sense. So I'll look for that. We won't see it at rookie minicamp. Grady Jarrett doesn't show up to rookie minicamp. But that said, that's something I think we could watch develop as we get deeper into the offseason program and we start to see. I'm curious to see if it'll be Ebiketie and Grady Jarrett side by side, and try to just overload one side and at least give offensive coordinators fits about what do we do about this side of our line, or that side of our line, whichever way you want to go. But you get my point. What do we do about that one side, and how do we protect it this way? We don't get crushed. So maybe I'm getting out of my skis, but I feel like that at least is something in my mind that gets me a little bit excited about the Falcons defense. All right, coming up next, why is it so easy to get a job in the industry? Because, there are a lot of people getting jobs in this industry that never did it a day in their life. Good for them. We'll discuss that next. Here on A to Z on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you search Locked On Sports Atlanta.